And that brings us to our game of the week. My favorite matchup every single year. We're heading out to Dallas, Texas at the Cotton Bowl, where the number one Texas Longhorns, newly number one, take on the number 18 Oklahoma Sooners. Such a such a rich traditional matchup every single year that we see this game, Brad. And this one's going to be no different. I get it. Texas is favored by 14 and a half in this one, but I guarantee you Oklahoma is going to come out swinging. These two teams absolutely hate each other, and they want nothing more than to ruin each other's season. 3:30 kickoff on ABC/ESPN Plus. Brad, the question on everyone's mind: how will Quinn Ewers look in his first game back after getting injured, and can he survive 4 quarters to keep his Texas Longhorns at the number one spot in their first year in the SEC, or will the Oklahoma Sooners spoil their playoff run? Brad, I'll turn it over to you. Thoughts on this Cotton Bowl year and who comes out on top in the Red River
Absolutely.
rivalry?
Yeah, absolutely, Nate. Thank you. Yeah, man, I feel like we could have done a 45-minute episode just talking about this game and all the storylines. Nate, I want to start off talking about Oklahoma, of course. It's such an interesting year and an interesting Oklahoma team because what do you think about when you think about Oklahoma? You think about throwing the ball all over the field, explosive offenses, great quarterback play, fast receivers, and not to say that they don't have that, but Nate, it's been a weird year. Oklahoma's, of course, um, transitioned to a new offensive coordinator. Everyone thought, and that's including me, that Jackson Arnold was just going to be the next great Oklahoma quarterback, and he was benched. I think Michael Hawkins has brought some stability, but they're still trying to figure out what he brings to the table. I will say Brent Venables, he's done a good job. He's got Oklahoma playing good defense, and Nate, we know that's what it takes in the SEC. Um, this one is just such an intriguing rivalry, Nate, because you mentioned it with these rivalry games, man. You throw everything out the window. It doesn't matter if a team comes in undefeated and another one comes in with a losing record. The passion and the hatred that these two teams have, it's going to make for a great game. Jumping over to Texas, I am a huge fan of Steve Sarkisian, and Nate, you mentioned in the lead up in our introduction to this week's episode, and I totally agree with you, man. There's no team that set itself apart yet, but I do think Texas is the favorites for them to be national champions. There's a reason they're number one. They're the most balanced team that we've seen on both sides of the ball, and I would say, you know, this Saturday is going to be their first big test. So many storylines. I want to real quickly start off on defense. Anthony Hill Jr., he's a sophomore. He's just so dynamic. 2.5 sacks. He's good against the run. He's good in coverage. He's so exciting. Their true freshman linebacker, Colin Simmons, he's got 4 sacks. Nate, we talked about Texas last year, and I remember specifically us talking about Texas after the Alabama game last year, and we said that's an SEC level defensive line. I don't know that they have quite that level of defensive line this year, but it's still a really, really strong defense. And then jumping over to offense, you mentioned Quinn Ewers, Nate. One of the storylines that I'm intrigued about is, look, Arch Manning has played really, really well in his couple of starts. He was a little bit shaky at times, did throw some picks, but I would say overall it was, he passed it with flying colors. Nate, I'm really intrigued. Do they have a series or two for him, a half to get him some playing time? Do they have some design runs? Because we saw that he's definitely a threat. So that's an intriguing storyline for me. Then also throwback, do they try to, get him some series so Quinn won't get re-injured? Of course, Texas has a big showdown with Georgia next week, so that's an intriguing one. The other guy I want to mention, and I feel like he's flying under the radar a little bit because we've got two very, very good freshman wide receivers, Jeremiah Smith from Ohio State, and then, of course, Ryan Williams, who, if you haven't heard, he's 17 years old from Alabama. But Texas has got a really, really good freshman receiver in Ryan Wingo. They've got Golden, they've got Alabama transfer Isaiah Bond. Texas has got weapons. I think that's where the difference is. Texas has just got too many weapons. I think Quinn Ewers is going to be jacked to play this one. And I'm kind of, giving my opinion here, obviously, but I think Arch Manning, I think they do find some ways to get him on the field. Nate, it's a rivalry game. Like I said, the passion, it's going to be so much fun. This is one of my favorite games of the year. I think it's close in the third quarter, but I think Oklahoma's lack of offense, Texas just attacking style on defense, it wears Oklahoma out. And eventually these playmakers for Texas take over. And Texas, I'm going to take Texas in this one, and I'm going to take them in the over. I think Texas wins this one by about 17 points and sets up a really big showdown, of course, with Georgia coming to Austin next week. But give me the Horns in this one.
Yeah, Brad. Entering this game, I can't believe I'm saying this, but who would ever thought that we'd be looking at this Texas-Oklahoma matchup and saying who's going to win in the trenches? I mean, that sounds like an LSU-Alabama preview mid-2000s, but here we are. Oklahoma's defense is nasty. They've allowed less than 25 points per game this year, and then you look at Texas, and they've held their opponents to under 13 every game. Then you look at the offenses. Obviously, Oklahoma struggled early on. They made the switch at quarterback to Hawkins Jr., who – as electric as he is, has only thrown one touchdown pass. He hasn't done anything spectacular. He can use his legs. Can Texas stretch the field? Can they keep him contained and force him to throw? Because that's going to be the key. They've got to keep him contained, and they got to force him to throw. You let him outside the pocket, you let him get on his feet and take off running. That's going to be a long day for the Texas Longhorns. Nonetheless, again, I want to mention this and emphasize this. It's going to come down to who's better up front. And right now, that's the Texas Longhorns. They have the better offensive line, and they have the better defensive line, in my opinion. Defensive line, maybe not by as much, but they definitely have that veteran leadership on the defensive side of the ball. Their secondary is playing well. To your point on the offensive side, interesting to see how Quinn Ewers comes out in this game. Does he look shaky? Does he look confident? Does he look like the old Quinn Ewers, or does he look skittish? That's going to be another key to the game. But in the end, I'm going to take the Texas Longhorns. I'm going to stick with my gut. They're setting up for a huge primetime matchup next week against the Georgia Bulldogs coming into town in Austin. Hook them this week. Let's see how both of these teams come out and perform. But look up front in the trenches. That's who's going to win this. Whoever wins trenches is going to win this game. Taking the Texas Longhorns. Let us know down in the comment who you think is going to come out on top in this year's Red River rivalry in Dallas, Texas at the Cotton Bowl. Be sure to subscribe down below. Give this video a like. Share it with your friends. We'll see you next week. It's time to break the huddle.